Okay, let's have a look now at SDG 4, quality education. The underlying principle for this Sustainable Development Goal is to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. As we have mentioned previously, COVID-19, the pandemic, has had a significant impact on lots of the SDGs. It has deepened the global learning crisis. Over 147 million children missed over half of in-person instruction in the year 2020 to 2021. 24 million learners of pre-primary may never return to school, so lots of people dropping out as a result of COVID. Education is a lifeline, particularly for children in crisis, and children who are denied education are permanently disadvantaged. Entrenched inequities in education have only worsened during the pandemic. Many countries are improving school infrastructure as classrooms reopen, but it's interesting to see some of the statistics there that globally, primary schools in the 2019-2020 year, that 25% of them lack electricity, drinking water, and basic sanitation, and 50% of them are lacking computers and internet access. These are things that we, of course, take for granted, fortunately, in Ireland. So, quality education has 10 targets. The first target here, target 4.1, by 2030, ensure that all girls and boys complete free, equitable, and quality primary and secondary education leading to relevant and goal for effective learning outcomes. So, if you think about your own education, where do you think you'd be without education? Where would any of us be without education? A question you can ask yourself: is it fair that nearly 60 million children in 2019 had no access to primary schools? When we look at these goals on the global level, the sheer inequity of them becomes very apparent. We are very fortunate, I think, in Ireland to have many systems that work well. They're not perfect, but we have many systems that are very advanced. Target 4.2, by 2030, ensure that all girls and boys have access to quality early childhood development, care, and pre-primary education so they are ready for primary education. Quality pre-primary education is the foundation of a child's journey. Every stage of education that follows relies on its success. Yet despite the proven and lifelong benefits, more than 175 million children, nearly half of all pre-primary age children globally, are not enrolled in pre-primary education. Target 4.3, by 2030, ensure equal access for all women and men to affordable and quality technical, vocational, and tertiary education, including university. Fantastic aspiration, but we have a big hill to climb to achieve that. The poorest population continues to lag behind, of course, with only 10% access to higher education in 2018 compared to 77% of those with higher incomes in the same year. Poverty impacts greatly, and some have to choose between attending school and working to support their family. Lack of healthcare, travel, and nutrition all play a role. Education is such a central and imperative for the achievement of the goals. Target 4.4. By 2030, substantially increase the number of youth and adults who have relevant skills, including the technical and vocational skills for employment, decent jobs, and entrepreneurship. Skills are critically important for the economic performance of countries. Greater proficiency in key skills amongst workers drive productivity and participation in the labour force, thus leading to increased opportunities, growth, and prosperity. These are all quite circular issues. The better the education, the more opportunities, more productivity, and more productivity, more opportunities. Is circular, feeding into each other. One success feeds into the success of the next. Target 4.5, by 2030, eliminate gender disparities in education and ensure equal access to all levels of education and vocational training for the vulnerable, including persons with disabilities, Indigenous peoples, and children in vulnerable situations. Girls' education strengthens economies and reduces inequality. It, of course, contributes to a more stable and resilient society. Unfortunately, around the world, about 129 million girls are out of school. Target 4.6. By 2030, ensure that all youth and a substantial proportion of adults, both men and women, achieve literacy and numeracy. The OECD Adult Skills Survey shows that about 17.9% or 1 in 6 Irish adults are at or below level 1 on a 5-level literacy scale. 1 in 6. How do you think your life would be if you were that one person? Difficult to put yourself in those situations, even just to think about it. Difficult to relate to those very, very challenging situations. Target 4.7. This is quite a bit, so I might break it down a little bit. By 2030, ensure that all learners acquire the knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development, including, among other things, through education for sustainable development and sustainable lifestyles, education on human rights, education on gender equality, promotion of a culture of peace and non-violence, education on global citizenship and appreciation of cultural diversity, and of culture's contribution to sustainable development. Knowledge and skills on all issues are imperative, and uh, the more knowledge and more skills we have, the more likely it is that we will take action and make these goals happen. Target 4A. Build and upgrade education facilities that are child, disability, and gender sensitive and provide safe, non violent, inclusive, and effective learning environments for all. It's very important when you're learning, as I'm sure many of you are aware, that you're in a supportive environment and that it's easy to access the material and that you're not unduly stressed about the more basic concerns like heat and being hungry. Here in Ireland, there are many children with specific needs or a disability that cannot get a place in a school. That is not equitable. What does the future hold for them and their families, and how can we address that? That's an interesting application or an interesting view of one of the challenges in a local context. Target 4B. By 2020, substantially expand the number of scholarships available globally to developing countries, in particular, least developed countries, small island developing states, and African countries for enrolment in higher education, including vocational training and information and communications technology, technical, engineering, and scientific programs in developed countries and other developing countries. Now, while that's quite clunky, I have moved the word where it is in brackets to where I have put it in bold to make it slightly easier to understand. Expand the number of scholarships available, focus on least developed countries, focus on all the types of training that are required, of course, education, higher education, vocational, ICT, engineering, scientific, and again, the focus is on developing and developed, lesser developed and developing countries. As we have already discussed, education and skills are critically important for economic performance of countries, and these have huge impacts in relation to our capacity then to achieve the goals and to achieve many of the fantastic aspirations that are embedded or enshrined in them. In order to do this, though, we need to fund the necessary changes for developing countries, particularly in relation to education. Target 4C. By 2030, substantially increase the supply of qualified teachers. This can be achieved through international cooperation for teacher training in developing countries, especially least developed countries and small island developing states. As we can see from the previous goals, education is a vital component in goal number 1, no poverty. So teacher training in developing countries is an obvious necessity and imperative. So there we have 10 targets, all very important. I think we can all relate to most of them. Education, of course, in Ireland has a long, long history and has been very central to many policies. I think Ireland has a good track record in education, And we're all going to work together to keep that being the case.